Hello, welcome to I Read This Book with Chris. With me, I'm Chris. Today we will be discussing The Space Between the Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. While discussing The Space Between the Worlds, I'll be drinking, it's a Scotch ale called The Dirty Bastard. I don't really know where to start with this book. Let's start with the back. Multiverse travel is finally possible, but there's just one catch. No one can visit a world where their counterpart is still alive. Enter Kara, whose parallel selves happen to be exceptionally good at dying, from disease, turf wars, or vendettas they couldn't outrun. Kara's life has been cut short on 372 worlds in total. On this dystopian Earth, however, Kara has survived. Identified as an outlier and therefore a perfect candidate for multiverse travel, Kara is plucked from the dirt of the wastelands. Now, what once made her marginalized is finally an unexpected source of power. She has nice apartments on the lower levels of the wealthy and walled-off Wiley City. She works and shamelessly flirts with her enticing yet aloof handler, Dell, as the two women collect off-world data for the Eldridge Institute. She even occasionally leaves the city to visit her family in the wastes, though she struggles to feel at home in either place. So long as she can keep her head down and avoid trouble, Kara is on a sure path to citizenship and security. But trouble finds Kara, one of her 8 remaining doppelganger dies under mysterious circumstances, plunging her into a new world with an old secret. What she discovers will connect her past and her future in ways she could never imagined, and reveal her own role in a plot that endangers not just her world, but the entire multiverse. Let's start with the plot. There's a lot to it. It's a short book. It's like 250, 260 pages, which is right in that sweet spot. It's a little longer than most of the books that I like to read. It's pretty short for modern fiction. The book is broken up into 4 parts. The first part clearly describes most of that in that's on the back. It sets everything up. There is 2 cities next to each other in this world. There's Ashtown and there's Wiley City. Ashtown, decrepit, poor town, ruled by rich, powerful. Wiley City people can go into Ashtown to visit. Ashtown people can come if they have a one-day visa or one-day pass, can come and visit. Occasionally people from Ashtown are allowed in for jobs and can be granted citizenship. Kara is granted citizenship because they have discovered that on many of these worlds, she is dead. Basically, multiverse works if you go and try to travel to another world where there's another copy of you, you die. Very gruesome death. Your body basically mangles. It says the universe doesn't want there to be 2 of you. So in order to try to fix that, it breaks you. It describes it in pretty horrific ways. That's part 1. Part 2, we realize that Kara is not the Kara from this world. She is out in the desert one day. The Kara from this world comes in, but then is killed and mangled because of the fact that she existed. She, being in Ashtown, realizing this person is not from Ashtown, is her from somewhere else, finds her earpiece where Dell, her overseer, is trying to explain, hey, this is what you do, get back, steals all the equipment and the clothes off of version of herself to come back. And so now she's in this world. Part 2, she goes to another world. So after explaining that she's not the real one, she then goes to another world. It's now finally been opened up to her because her in this world has died. Now, here's yet another world she can go on to. She hops into this world only to start to die. This world is rejecting her, but instead of calling back and saying, hey, I'm dying, she crawls out into the street and is found. They take her, put her in a pod, basically heals her up. She meets another version of herself when she's thrown into jail. They both escape, and then when she is traveling back and she calls herself back to her world, she then kills the emperor of the city, allowing his brother, who in this world, and only in this world, is a nice guy, to take control over Ashtown. Part 3 is her dealing with the consequences of this. So the company that she's working for is run by a man called Adam Bosch, who in other versions of the multiverse is either dead or the of Ashtown. He is one of two brothers, Adam, or brother Nick, are two brothers of the Emperor. In some worlds, one or the other, takes control over Ashtown. And in this world, only in this world, Adam was adopted by some citizens of Wily City, has grown up in Wily City, and now created this company to travel the multiverse. Kara killed him in the other multiverse. Adam knows this because they have, in all of these multiverses, things that collect data and skim information off their computers. So they know he's dead. Adam goes and tries to recruit her, and she realizes that one of the things that Adam is doing is going to these other multiverses, killing off other versions of people who might create this machine in other multiverses. Because if other people have in other multiverses, they can come and ruin everything he's got. So he kills top scientists in other multiverses. He kills other versions of himself. He'll go and do whatever. And he tries to recruit Kara towards this team of maintenance. They call it maintenance, but they're assassins who go to other places to kill for him. She's dealing with this. That's part 3. All of that. Part 4, she decides she needs to kill Adam. So she befriends some people that she knew in Wily City. So in part 3, Adam killed Kara's mentor, Gene. So then in part 4, she decides because he did this and he's going to go to other multiverses and kill other people because he doesn't care, he'll kill whoever he wants. She has to go and kill Adam. So she goes to Nick, who runs Wily City, through one of his guys. Basically says, I can let you into the city and we need to kill Adam. She lets them in, they come in, and together they go and break into Adam's house. And she replaces his eye drops, or she doctors them with a virus that she stole out of another multiverse, which will kill him. It'll give him a couple of years, but he'll die. Nick, who was going to kill him, ends up not killing him because they realize they are brothers and they're both ruthless and they'd rather argue with each other than kill each other. She's kicked out of Wily City, ends up in Ashtown, and manages to save her relationship she had with her overseer, who she is in love with. That's the plot. It's a lot. I think I'm really happy with this book. I have not looked into her at all, but from some of the things on the back, it seems that Micaiah this is her first book. This is published in 2020. This one's printed in 2021. Apparently, it's her first book. I'm very happy with it. I think it's a good and unique version of the multiverse. I have another story, another book. Let's see. I think it might be Paratime. Basically, you can travel to other versions of yourself, other timelines. And that one, it was described as timeline, but it's it's the same concept. Different multiverses. But the further away you got, you could not jump to a universe that was right next to you. You could only jump to one that was a distance away. This one is interesting because you can jump to multiverses only if they are close to yours. And there are a couple of worlds that are they can no longer travel to because they were close and they got all this information, but something happened and now that multiverse is too far away and can no longer be accessed. Which is an interesting concept. I really do like the idea of not being able to travel to another world where another version of you exists. I find it weird that the people that they have traveling are people who other versions of themselves have died. It would seem to make sense that if this was the rule, you couldn't travel to another world where another version of you existed. There'd be many worlds where I don't exist. I'm the 4th kid. Maybe my parents only had 3. I mean, you could have a world that looks very similar to ours. Parents stopped at 3 kids instead of 5. In which case, I would not exist. Or what if my parents waited another year? Like, why am I still a person that exists? It seems like, even though in the different versions of the worlds, different people have very different roles, very different characteristics. Like, in some worlds, Nick, for example, most of them he's an evil emperor. But in some of them, his father died, so both him and his brother are alive, and his brother becomes evil, and then he becomes religious. And because of his religion, he then is not as cruel and is looking out for everyone, is trying to do all the proper things that, religious people should. That can happen, but there can't be another world where people do the baby making, but do it on a different day. Therefore, a different version of a different person that's not me, that doesn't have my DNA exists. Maybe that's a point that doesn't need to get argued. Maybe that's, I don't know. Another thought that came to mind reading this book. So I don't read a whole lot of modern science fiction. A lot of it deals with subjects that are on one side of the political spectrum, let's say. You know that most of the people who wrote this are on the left politically. A lot of them have a lot to do with LGBT, with, at the same time, global warming, same time, race relations, same time, apartheid. And none of these things are bad, but a lot of them all come up, and you need to have the same perspective, let's just say. And so a lot of science fiction I'll go and I'll pick up, and more modern science fiction I'll go and I'll try to pick up, and then I realize this person is walking the party line. This, I don't think, did it. It discussed on most of those concepts, most of those thoughts, but I thought it was done in a very intellectual and artistic way that I could appreciate. I keep trying to find the quote, and I cannot find it. I Google it, I even ask ChatGPT, and ChatGPT gives me a bunch of lists of quotes, some of which it admits it's made up, which is a weird thing to do. Other ones seem to be real, but aren't the quote I'm looking for. And it tries to, the concept that, maybe you can know the quote for me, that there are 3 different things that can be labeled art, but you need to be able to separate. One, so there's pornography, propaganda, and then there's art. And I think art should have another word that begins with a P, but I can't figure out what that is. So propaganda is walking the party line, always telling you this is the right way to think about this. There are a lot of different books that walk that line. Most of them do not last. I don't think, that don't really exist in people's consciousness for very long because they don't do a great job. One that's probably a step up and more interesting would be pornography. And I don't just mean sexual pornography, like food porn or stuff like that. Like, I've been getting into a lot of space military science fiction for when it comes to audiobooks. So when I listen to it at work, there are some good stories in that, and then all of a sudden it'll just go and it'll talk for 15 or 20 minutes about a battle, and it'll list off for a battle, this regiment had this many people and they were doing this other regiment over here had these squadrons. This squadron had this many things. It was going north by northwest and was traveling at 300, and it basically felt like word problems in math class back in 4th grade, just listing off numbers, which I don't like. I guess is good if you're reading actual military history and you're trying to learn stuff, but when it comes to your science fiction, I guess maybe I'm not the right reader for it. But it's basically that's what you could call pornography, or like Fast and the Furious. I haven't really seen them, but I hear it's just a lot of fast cars. You want to see fast cars. Or a lot of movies where it's just fighting. Rom-coms. There's no depth, nothing interesting. Propaganda, you have pornography, and then third, you have true art, which you go and you're trying to create something for the creation itself. You're not caring about what the audience thinks. You're not trying to feed their need like you do in pornography and say, this is what they want, I'll give it to them good, and give them lots of it, or propaganda, which is, this is what I'm trying to say, I'm trying to force it into there. It's not forcing it from you, it's not giving them exactly what they want. It's trying to create the best thing there is. This does a good job. Another thought that I had while reading this book: is all science fiction of its time and place? What do I mean by that? Science fiction is a very modern. A lot of people bring it back to Frankenstein being one of the earliest versions. Jules Verne, H.G. Wells. A lot of these are the early pioneers of science fiction, which means if you're being liberal, 200 years old, in its more modern variety, 100, 120 years old, depending on how you want to describe it. But our world has changed so drastically in that time period that most books, most science fiction, if you were to pick it up, I think you'd be able to do a pretty good job of saying, hey, this was written, and be able to get it within 10 years. The only exception I can think of that is Dune. Dune might be a little more timeless. I think Frank Herbert did a really good job with that. But old science fiction, one of the things I love about it, just randomly, you can tell that what time it is, because they'll just go and then all of a sudden they'll be like, oh yeah, and then they started smoking a cigarette. It's like, okay, that's not something that's in modern stuff. But in modern stuff, you'll then have a lot of this more political, I that's not the right word, but I don't know the right word, stuff in it. But if you go back to the 60s and the late 60s or the 70s, there's a lot of stuff about the sexual revolution. A lot of that's brought in there. I haven't read much Heinlein, but the stuff I have is very of the sexual revolution. Cyberpunk is definitely of its time and place that I enjoy. It is all science fiction, even though it's telling of the future. Is it telling of the future, or is it telling of the present, which it was written? And given 30 years, will I be able to come back to some of this modern stuff and to be able to appreciate it more because there's that distance? Or am I more drawn to the older science fiction because it brings me into that world that I couldn't have, but I could tell, this is the author, this is who the author is, this is the time that they came from. And I can get a little something that I can't really get while reading more literary pieces, because I don't know. These are the things that I struggle with. See, another thing I liked about this book was the title, The Space Between the Worlds. It works on many levels. The space between the worlds, when they are traversing from one world to another. There's talk about Niam, which is what some people believe is the god of the in-between space, which you can feel, which can hurt you. And Niam is the person or the power that, if you're brought into a world that has another copy of you, will break you, and is the thing that she uses to kill the other version of Adam. The space between the worlds, because she is from one world in another. In the world she grew up in, she lived in the dark parts of Ashtown, yet she comes into this world, she's in Wiley City, and when she visits her family, in this world, her family is, they're called ruralites, they live in the rural area. They are religious, it's like the nicer part of Ashtown, with more religious people who, it's not as dangerous. It's not, they aren't suburbs, but it's the nicer part of Ashtown. And so she's in between the worlds at that level, because she doesn't have anywhere to belong. She does not belong in the dark part of Ashtown because she never lived in this part and none of the people know her. She doesn't belong in the world. She doesn't belong in there. At the end, when everything is said and done, she's kicked out of Wiley City. Dell, her lover, comes and visits her, and they keep going. It says that they'll go back and forth, basically. They'll live in between these worlds, and she'll work in one world, going to another. She'll be in Ashtown, and she will be basically the conduit. She will write letters or help with advertising for people in Ashtown who are trying to contact the people in Riley City. Either the people who say, hey, come here and come visit, we want your money, or to the people who have kids that go to Riley City. So she's there. It is a good book. If you come across it, pick it up. I actually originally found this in Barnes & Noble, and I was really tempted. One, by the cover, which I think is really cool. You got someone walking here in Wiley City, someone here in Ashtown. I like the idea of the multiverse, but then I read a little bit of it and realized that it had a lot of the political stuff. And once again, that's not the right word. I don't know the right word. It felt like propaganda, like a lot of modern science fiction does. But then I found it at a library sale, and so it was like $1 or something, or $1 or $2. So I bought it then, because I'm not going to spend $20 on it, but I will spend $2. If you find this for $20, pick it up. It's a good read. I would spend $20 on it now. But that's part of the issue with books, is you don't know. If you haven't read it, is it worth the $20? I mean, buying books for $2 is easy. Buying them for $20 is a little harder. If you like this video and you made it all the way to the end, give it a like. Subscribe. If you can remember the quote that I can't remember, tell me about it. If you've read it, if you know anything else about her, all that stuff. Bye.